Hello, everybody. In the current affairs this week, the week ended 13th of April 2025. This week saw sharp swings in the economic news. As we all know, last week, the US administration had announced reciprocal tariffs against all its major trading partners. And in accordance with that, all the goods that would be exported by these trading partners and imported by the US would be subjected to the kind of import duty or tariffs which were announced by the US. This led to a decline in the US stock markets. So last week, the Nasdaq declined by more than 10% and S&P 500 declined by more than 9% last week. This week, after these tariffs which were announced became operative, the US announced that these announced tariffs are being paused for 90 days. But this pause, as they announced, was applicable to all countries except China. And for China, they increased their tariffs. The reason given by the US administration for this kind of an approach with China was that China had imposed retaliatory tariffs against the US. So, in fact, when these tariffs were paused for all the countries in the world, on China, the tariffs were increased. And now, it is a full-blown trade war between China and the US. We really don't know where it will end up and how it will take the next turn. The impact on the US stock market on account of these announcements was that the Nasdaq was up net by 7% this week and S&P 500 was up by more than 5% this week. The Indian stock markets net this week were by and large unmoved, and they were just sideways on account of the news which were developing at the global front. This much talked about tariffs, the reason why they were paused and the way it is being discussed in the economic circles is quite interesting. The first reason it seems why these tariffs were paused was that there was a sharp decline in the prices of US bonds. The US bonds are considered globally as a safe haven for investing. Whenever there is some fear anywhere in the world, people gravitate towards the US bonds and they are buyers in the US bonds. All the major central banks of the world hold their reserves in these US bonds. But on account of whatever was announced by the US administration, the prices of these US bonds started declining quite sharply. And effectively, on account of that, the 10-year US government security yield on these bonds went up from 4% to 4.5%. This is a very significant move, which effectively means that the yield on these bonds has increased by 12.5%. So 0.5% on 4% effectively, as I said, would mean a 12.5% in the yields on the US bonds. This increase in the US bond yields means that the US bond prices are falling. And if whatever was the trend that would have continued for more time, this would have led to many complications and ill effects on the US economy. So it is widely believed that the US has paused these tariffs on account of the slide in the bond market. The another reason for this pause of US tariffs was, as is being talked, is that the CEOs of major US companies had got in touch with the US administration and raised their concerns about the economic policies. Moreover, the power centers in the Republican Party and the mood of the people at large also led the US administration to pause the tariff. And third, and the important aspect which is always there in any kind of negotiations is that you first try to make a big scene out of what is something which you can do to the other party, which the US, after announcing the reciprocal tariffs, let the countries of the world understand that they are all ready to do this kind of a tariff infliction on them, and that could bring them on the negotiating table. But in this entire process, the world could understand that on account of whatever has happened on the US bond market, the US financial systems is quite in a fragile state, and the US might not be able to do everything what it is intending to. Moreover, as I said, that the trade war between China and the US is going to take new turns in the times to come, and it could lead to a realignment of the way the trading and business and commerce is happening across the globe. That is all for this week. Thank you.